You have two natures, they have one. And we talked about this in Romans chapter 5. There are two spiritual races, so to speak. There are those who are spiritually dead, they're one-dimensional, and they basically, their body reigns over them. And that's why you see a lot of the terrible things you do, that people act like animals. Of course, in our culture, that's inflamed by the fact that we're indoctrinating kids that they are animals. So that would make sense. But then when you become a born-again Christian, the life of God basically becomes one with your life. God moves in, and now you have a second option. We've talked about the fact that that's a glorious privilege of grace. You have a choice. You don't have to just submit to the body anymore. You can now walk by the Spirit. But if I choose to obey the sin nature, the old sin nature, it will still bring me under its power. It will still have the same results. It will still totally wipe me out. And that's my choice. And so Paul presents two options. Basically, not just two options, two masters. And immediately I thought of Jesus. You cannot serve two masters, he said. It's impossible. You'll be divided. You'll just love one and despise the other, or vice versa. And then he even called out a potential master. You cannot serve both God and money. Mammon. You cannot serve God and reputation. You cannot serve God and pleasure. You cannot serve God and marriage. Whatever it is that you could possibly make an idol out of, whatever it is that could become your master passion, Jesus is calling us out and he's saying, evaluate yourself. What is the ultimate authority in your life? What do you spend most of your time tending to, thinking about, serving? Why do you get up in the morning? Who is it for? Or what activity are you looking forward to? What is it that you can't live without? Who is it you can't live without? That's your master. That's your master. See, it dictates. It has power over you. It dictates everything that you will do, everything you won't do. And so, on this very difficult topic in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, Paul says, all things are lawful to me. And he's going to unpack this. I'm going to explain a little more, so bear with me. All things are lawful to me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. You see, many Christians are playing with fire. Many Christians have one foot in and one foot out, but really that position doesn't exist. Either you are totally with the Lord, or by default you are in the world and you're serving sin. You're serving the sin nature. And they're getting burned. And you know, I sincerely believe that there are born-again Christians who are just not submitting their lives to the Lord. And it made me think of Proverbs chapter 6, verses 27 and 28. It says, can a man hold fire to his chest and his clothes not be burned? Can he walk on hot coals and his feet not be seared? It's funny because I used to watch Mythbusters. Anybody watch that show? Mythbusters. Cheap show. Well, one time they wanted to try to figure out, you know, is it possible to walk across hot coals without getting your feet burned? And one of the hosts, what's their names? There's the kind of albino guy in the,
Jamie? Adam.
Adam. I think it was, I can't remember which one it was, but he actually walked across the coals. And it wasn't the one with the braid, the one that wears the hat. That's Adam. Okay. So, anyway, so he walks across the coals and he ends up getting really injured. Oh, yeah. Really injured. And he just sort of proves for everybody that that was a really stupid idea, right? Millions of people watching TV, and he spends the rest of the show in a wheelchair with his feet bandaged up. I mean, he burned them bad. So, you know, I'm sure he was getting paid a lot of money, but common sense tells me don't walk across the coals. And that's what Paul is saying. Don't you understand? This is common sense. If you serve sin, sin's your master. You don't have to. You're a Christian. You're born again. The life of God is in you. The Holy Spirit is in you. You can serve God. But whichever one you serve, that's your master. You can say you serve God. You can come to church. You can be part of all the ministries of the church. But if you serve sin, sin is your master. And so, first he's appealing to common sense. And then, of course, he brings out the two outcomes. Sin resulting in death. Now, we need to be careful. He's not talking about salvation. He's assuming the person he's talking to is saved. Death, though, when he says sin brings death, we're talking death in general. Decay. We're talking destruction. We're talking just, horrible circumstances in your life. As a Christian, I can make terrible decisions. What's that billboard I saw? Or no, it was a picture of a church message board. I can't remember it right now. But it said something about people. Oh, no. Forgive me.
It
Lost
doesn't
it.
get better.
Yeah, it's running off on me. I'm going to wait. I know. It's on my phone. That's the terrible thing. I should look on my phone, but then I'd be like someone in the youth group. Oh, look at this. But people can make terrible, terrible decisions, and they could have terrible, terrible consequences. Christian or not Christian. Sin has the same effect. All right? So just because you're under God's grace doesn't mean that sin will have no consequences in your life. In fact, sin will always have severe consequences. Who remembers the story of Samson?
Oh, yeah.
It's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. I don't know why. I think maybe it probably appeals to every boy that this guy was overtaken by the Holy Spirit and he grabs the jawbone of a donkey and kills 1,000 people with it. Yeah. And, by the way, you don't hear that in Sunday school very often. This is what happens when the Spirit of God comes upon you, But that's what happened to Samson. Just used mightily of God. But he had a problem. He took it for granted. Mm-hmm. And he didn't just, meddle with sin. He went full bore. He understood that God's blessing was on him from birth. He understood that God was using him, took full advantage of that. But what happened in the end? He just went a little bit too far. Right? He tipped his hand a little bit too much. Mm-hmm. And then his girlfriend, for the third time, trying to, have him bound and captured. Samson, the Philistines are upon thee. And then he says, I will just get up and break free just as always. And then, after they cut his hair, what happened? Text says, but he did not know that the Spirit of God had left him. Oops. No more power for Samson. By the way, I think he was probably a scrawny guy. That's just my opinion. I think God does things like that. Don't be surprised if you meet him in heaven. He's just hi, Samson? The one from the Bible? You sure?